Joining us in the Sandbox today, we discuss Interconnected by IoT with Matt Tyler, Rebecca Sendel, and Dr. G. Just ahead. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Prolifics Innovation Sandbox. I'm your host, Greg Hodgkinson. If you're new to our show, today is especially exciting as we're kicking off our second series. So join us here every Thursday, same time for the next few weeks. We're going to be hosting different technology experts who are leaders in their field, and they'll be sharing their passion and what they see being the future of hot technologies like IoT, advanced analytics, cloud, and so much more. Your voice is an important part of the show, so please submit your questions at any time in the live chats, which is either just to the right or below the video feed. And don't forget to stick around towards the end for Q&A. Now, today, we're lucky to have three distinguished guests with us. Firstly, we have Matt Tyler joining us from Wachter, an IoT leader whose innovations are keeping their customers ahead of the digital disruption curve. Then we have Rebecca Sendel from Arrow, a leading manufacturer of electronics components aggregated with enterprise computing solutions. And lastly, our very own Dr. G, our chief data scientist and head of our advanced analytics practice. Everybody, welcome to the Innovation Sandbox.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll start with a simple one, Matt. I'm going to toss it your way. Today's topic is IoT. Before we delve into the technology, can we ask what drew you into IoT? How did you get started?
It's really my customers that got me started. I started my career as an industrial electrician on the factory floors. I worked in commercial applications as well. And as technology grew, our customers were always looking for someone to do the installs for them. So I've grown my career by being around and being embedded in the technology as new technology comes on the market.
So I guess following the money.
Yep.
All right. And Rebecca, so your company brings together IoT and software. Everybody knows what IT is. Can you explain to us what OT is and why it's so special?
Yep. Well, OT is really what Matt just touched on, where the devices are in remote locations, factory floors, retail stores, hospitals, etc. But they need to be networked. Data needs to be collected from those devices. They need to be managed. And that's a part of IoT that the IT department doesn't really talk about. And so that's where Arrow is adding the value of aggregating the OT suppliers like Wachter with their services and solutions, and the IT suppliers like Prolifics and IBM to bring solutions together end to end.
Excellent. Now, Matt, your team is delivering innovations to organizations that are getting all this right. I'd like to know how they're getting an edge. I believe you have a very interesting example that involves, of all things, mops.
Yeah. So for instance, we do have a restaurant customer that was looking for a way to monitor the effectiveness of degreasing of their floors. Slip and falls is an issue within their environment. So by adding a accelerometer and a couple other interesting technologies, we were able to connect a mop to the internet to gather information about the effectiveness of their cleaning schedules.
So I guess, we all thought that IoT was going to go this way, but, we've talked about fridges being connected, but mops is definitely, a first one. So Dr. G, as a data scientist, all of these, sensors and devices must be producing sizable amounts of data. I'm pretty sure that gets you excited. Could you share some of that excitement with us?
Absolutely. And it's, you think of a mop as being a relatively pedestrian device, right? Nobody's really monitoring the activity of a mop. But in fact, just like Matt was alluding to, there's a lot of ramifications about not cleaning correctly. And there's nobody monitoring that other than going around and eyeballing it. So, I don't want us to step over this whole MOP thing. I'm particularly excited about the MOPs. I know that we have a lot of high-end instrumentation that collects a lot of data and blah, blah, blah. But oh my God, if you have a device that can track the effectiveness of the mopping, the amount of cleanser being used, how often it's being used, and you couple that with, the facility in terms of mapping the facility, you add weather to it, a whole dimension, that you can actually determine how many times you should be mopping given the weather outside, if it's raining and muddy and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's an exciting amount of information that would go unnoticed if it wasn't for devices that Matt's talking about. I mean, it's exciting. Once you get that data, you complement it with just an enormous amount of your own operational data. You can monetize all that information because as Carl mops that restaurant, that is a unique piece of data. That is intellectual property that nobody in the world has. It's phenomenal what that mop could represent in terms of analysis and monetization. So anyway, I know I'm too excited, but.
And I guess, so we talk, mops in a restaurant there, Matt, but I mean, I guess, more extensively within retail must be a massive area where IoT plays out and delivers benefits. But also, I guess, where all this data could deliver huge amounts of benefit, because obviously where AI comes in is the ability to take this data at scale and then detect those small little nuances and those little nuggets and behavior patterns that people would never be able to detect.
Yeah, it's amazing that the technology that has been developed and is being implemented for a connected mop can be drug across horizontally to fashion retail, boutique retail, even big box retail. The important thing in anyone that's engaged in IoT over the last 8 or 10 years is it's got to simplify someone's life, right? We can collect all of this data, but if it requires a heavy amount of training or recalibration of operations, it will never succeed. Our focus is to implement technology that's very discreet, that is almost unnoticeable to the everyday operator, and can gain efficiencies such as labor reductions or customer experience, right? Increasing customer experience. That's our driving focus in IoT. We collect the data and then we ship it to a company like Prolifics that can actually make it actionable data. Our partnership with, Arrow and Intel and others allows Wachter as the systems integrator to really understand the business use cases and take the same technology that we are utilizing in other areas and apply it to a specific use case. So we don't necessarily need to call them one-off applications because the technology is the same and can be scaled very rapidly. But at the same time, it's solving for very unique situations for each customer.
And the beauty is, and I think Dr. G, you started alluding to this, but is, once you've got the data, when you start collecting the data, you may not even understand the value you may start getting out of that data tomorrow or in a few weeks' time or in the months and years ahead. Once you've got the data, the use cases that you can start applying it to is pretty much limitless. And well, I'll let you carry on with that one.
Well, I think that the use cases could come before collecting the data. Just the conversation of the mop is just exciting. You can explode that. You could, have a custodian dashboard. I mean, there's just so much information that you could be publishing. I want to remind the listeners that what IoT represents to analytics is a view of the world that we don't normally see. Yeah. Right? It's collecting information that would otherwise be mundane or, relatively trivial that, we don't pay attention to that data. So it's almost like the majority of the world has been walking around with blinders on. There's a vast amount of data out there that we just simply don't collect because we can't, and so it doesn't really matter. But in fact, if you could collect it and incorporate that into you can operationalize that kind of AI Well, if you can incorporate that and internalize all of this other information that's going around us, you really increase your ability for competitive advantage. I mean, you're collecting information and digesting information that your competitors are ignoring.
Now, this is a technology show. We've got a technology-focused audience. I've got you, Matt, here representing the machines. I've got you here, Dr. G, representing AI. It would be remiss of me if I didn't ask the question, which I'm sure is on everyone's lips, which is, which of those two do we blame for Skynet? Is it the machines or the AI?
Not me.
Okay. All right. So seriously, though, even if the machines aren't about to take over, there's a very real danger of hackers. So, we've got these devices out there gathering data. There's a very real danger of hackers taking over maybe more significant machinery. So you've only got to think about environments like nuclear. How do we keep these OT assets out of the hands of the bad guys? I don't know, Rebecca, if that's something you could shed some light on.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it always comes up in every survey. What are you worried about with IoT? And security always comes up. But I guess the key thing to think about is this is an end-to-end problem, right? You need to look all the way from the smallest device that's deployed. There's a story about hacking into, I believe it's a casino through a fish tank and something, a device that was in a fish tank. And then all the way up to, very, large data centers and everything in between. The good news is that, with Arrow's expertise in electronics, we're starting by working with the suppliers all the way down at the chip level on the security. It's being designed into the devices. So today's devices are getting more and more secure. And then, everybody's more familiar maybe with the IT side of security, but when you blend that together, that really needs to be the approach. Take away those access points. And again, it's got to be end to end to really take care of that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So Matt, I'm going to come back to you. You spoke about your MOP project. That was pretty interesting. Could you share another IoT project? I know we both focus on the healthcare space, and I think you've got an interesting story to tell about healthcare as well.
Sure. So over the last several years, we've developed a video and audio solution that helps with fall risk patients in ICU specifically. So in the healthcare space, in ICU, where in traditional healthcare, a hospital may assign a nurse or a technician to sit with a patient one-to-one, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as long as that patient's under care. Our solution, it allows the hospital, who may already be suffering from a limited staff as it is, to move from a 1-to-1 ratio to maybe a 1-to-8 or a 1-to-12 ratio, while still providing that same level of care that the patient expects. So we've been doing this as a very point solution, like I said, for the last several years. And now we're really starting to expand and add more IoT devices to become more relevant, to add more value to the investments our customers are making. We're starting to ingest temperature data, ambient light data, vibration and noise levels throughout the patient's stay that will allow a more in-depth patient satisfaction score. And Dr. Michael and I were talking about this just the other day and how valuable that data is. I was explaining the sensors we're putting in our devices, and I know Mike's gears started turning immediately around what he could do with that data, because it far exceeded what my thought process even was around that data set.
Well, there we go, Mike. Dr. G, I'm guessing this certainly excites you as well. How could you transform healthcare using AI paired with Matt's devices?
Matt was alluding to it. It's performance based now. You're being paid by how satisfied or how well you did with a patient. It's no longer just a doc, giving you a shot and sending you on your merry way. Really, the payment to the healthcare is based on performance. And what Matt's devices are doing is that they're proving that the patient's stay was unaffected by temperature, right? That it was quiet, that it wasn't humid. And then if you couple all of that with George or Sally, the nurse, with a band. Everybody wears a band in a hospital anyway. So you have one band that's an RF device that you can monitor the movement of individuals. So you know how often the nurse came and visited. That's important for the patient satisfaction. And think about the operational piece of that. if you have one nurse taking care of 20 or 30 patients, or I have no idea what that ratio is, but the point is that if they're overworked, you're going to see that in the operational data. How often does this nurse get an opportunity to visit all the patients that they need? So it's not only just about the patient themselves, but it's about just driving the whole healthcare operation, right? It's ingesting a lot of information that it really gives you that. I know I sound like a broken record, but it gives you that competitive advantage, right?
And even before we bring that in, I mean, so Matt, what you described was the value in just being able to have the, I guess, evidence and to make sure that patient was being taken care of correctly. But, Dr. G, if you bring in AI, we're able to, and with all these data points, we can massively affect how to optimize the use of the hospital's resources. You spoke about the nurse, and really, we all know that healthcare systems are under huge amounts of strain. So this would be very, very crucial to be able to, the good old do more with less, which is
and to do it.
How do we?
And you have to appreciate the fact that it spans the scope of time series. So you certainly can do batch and load all of this and consume all of it and analyze it like a crime scene, but you could also just ingest all of that in real time. Literally in real time, you can be making decisions, and that's where really analytics could really start, exercising that strength. Is we can ingest all of this in real time and actually have real time suggestions for operations. Yep. And you can drive that by linear programs, min-max models. There's a lot of different things beyond just typical meat and potatoes, forecasting and predictive.
So the way I like to think of it, because I mean, there's something very, I think most people think AI is going to be this kind of overlord that's going to give us direction, right? Overlord that's going to tell us what to do. The way I like to think of it is, that AI is going to give that nurse what I call a spidey sense, that spidey sense that tingles, that she may not be able to have her senses out there to figure out that she needs to go and see a patient, but AI is going to give her that nudge to say, you know what, you might want to think about going and checking on this patient because we're picking something up that means he might need your help.
That's exactly it. In my mind, statistics is almost always wrong, right? And predictive models are always wrong. It's just sometimes, the saying, sometimes they're of value. It's really about making suggestions to improve stuff, right? But there are thresholds that you can set in an organization where if nobody else is paying attention, we can pay attention and we could trigger something that somebody else, just the human response might be too slow to respond to, right? But most of it is just really suggestions, your spidey sense. That's a great way to put it. I'll be using that from now on. It's really just giving you that spidey sense. And it can do that in batch all the way to real time.
Yeah. And Greg, think about it this way. Go back to the MOP scenario. If we ingest weather data, and if the employer has a strained workforce as it is, you may not be worried about mopping the floors on that regular schedule. You're worried about making your customers happy. But if it's raining or snowing outside, you may need to clean those floors where AI can automatically trigger someone to say, hey, maybe it's time to mop those floors. Moving into healthcare, same thing. The video as a sensor is so valuable that we can look at antiquated devices, or they shouldn't say antiquated, but more manual devices like older respirators that have been pulled out of the closets and utilized during COVID. We can use video with AI to do APR, automated number recognition, where we can now take a very manual device and put it on the network and ingest that data, while at the same time that camera is looking at the patient for abnormal behavior. Maybe they're getting restless, maybe they're kicking their covers off. That can trigger an alert to go to the nurse to go check in on that patient. Yeah,
and so the nurse is still going to be the healthcare professional that needs to deliver the care. But AI is helping out there, and the sensors are helping out there because they're just providing her the feelers into the ward that she wouldn't necessarily have otherwise, and maybe not have to do quite as much pacing up and down.
We've gotten feedback from our customers that it's taken a level of stress off of them, just knowing that there's an extra set of eyes on their patients at all times.
Absolutely. So Rebecca, I want to bring you back in. Yes, and you alluded to this already, but Arrow plays this kind of special role in the ecosystem. So you focus on both the hardware as well as the enterprise software. Can you give us some insight into how that works and maybe a story about where that's worked really well?
Yeah, listening to Dr. G and Matt talk, it always brings me back to the fact that IoT solutions take many parties to be involved to be successful. You have to have the OT company like Matt's company, but then they need to bring in device companies, maybe it's a camera or the accelerometers that are on the mop or whatever. Then you need to network all of that so that the devices are connected. Then you need to put all that data somewhere and manage how much data. Do I have too much data? Do I have not enough data? Then you need to put that data where it needs to go. It probably is multiple places, because even in the case of a restaurant, HR might need the data. Operations needs the data, management needs the data, the custodian needs the data, et cetera, right? So there are so many places and parties and stakeholders and technologies that need to be brought together. I don't want to make it sound scary that it's complicated, but there are moving parts, and that's why it's so important to form an ecosystem that simplifies this. And that's the beauty of having an OT partner like a Wachter and an IT partner like a Prolifics. Get to know each other, work together, come up with solutions that take out all of the noise of that, and you can focus on the business transformation. So,
absolutely.
So one of my favorite examples is related to airports. Unfortunately, think back to when we used to go to airports more, and think about customer satisfaction in an airport. There's a lot of little things that affect everything that happens when you walk in the door. How long are the lines? Did the escalator work, or did you have to lug your bag down the stairs? Did your plane leave on time? All of those things can be monitored, but you need all those pieces I just talked about to make that happen. And then you need the analytics to know how you prioritize what you're going to do to improve our customer experience.
Because in that kind of dynamic environment, you need to make decisions at speed. And AI has definitely got a role to play there, which is how do you optimize this entire ecosystem within an airport to get the best outcome for all the passengers?
And guess what? A good outcome means more revenue. It means better safety. So there's so many benefits, and there's so much data for Dr. G.
Actually, that's a good. Yeah. So actually, that was an interesting. I was going to make a comment, which is, in a way, IoT sometimes where IoT is human focused. In your example, Matt, where you've got a video that's monitoring a patient, or maybe it's wearable devices. I was reading something that said if you take the human out of the equation and let AI do its job, then it's going to optimize it won't necessarily optimize the result based on people. So maybe IoT actually is helping there. It's helping bring more of that people data in to make sure that AI is making a better overall solution and optimization.
The people are the ones that make the decisions through and through. We really rely on IoT and AI to help make the suggestions. Like you said, at speed, in context, because otherwise it's just a machine, and it's looking for the fastest, easiest path to do the job. So like Rebecca said, it really does require an ecosystem of partners. From our customers' perspective, it really requires a larger group to contribute, because so many different departments, so many different people can take advantage of the data that's produced. That's where you really start to see the return on investment.
Now, things like some of the obvious.
Can I jump in there? The term digital transformation has been a buzzword that has been flying around for a few years now. And, this IoT is that enabling technology to make that happen. So that's what it's about, right? Is getting to do more things remotely using digital technologies, do smarter things using digital technologies. So I like to tie it together with that phrase, the digital transformation phrase.
Yep.
I would add that it gives visibility to data that we normally don't have access to. All of the IoT just gives visibility, gives enormous amount of information that we just normally, or data that we normally don't pay attention to for any number of reasons. And AI gives that data form, context, and we present that added information, that added insight to a human, and the human is making all of the decisions, right? But they're getting insight from a dimension that they normally don't see. They normally don't have any visibility to. I think that's really the value of IoT in my mind's eye is really visibility to data that we would normally not have access to.
Now, I want to touch on something. So it's also the data at speed. Now, I forget which one of you used the term real time. I mean, there's one thing applying AI to this data after the fact, but when you can apply AI to this data in real time, that's when you can actually make a difference. Because when you apply the data, the AI after the fact, you can make a difference to future instances of the mop being taken across the floor. When it's in real time, you can make a difference right then and there. And what I want to bring into the conversation is how much is 5G going to play a role in that kind of real-time aspect? I don't know who wants to pick up that point.
Well, coming from the technology side, in going back to Dr. G's statement about visibility, I find that more of that data that was acquired manually was difficult to get. That's why it never had the visibility. We make it easier by applying the technology. Now, when you get into vast expanses, say the industrial oil fields, solar fields, things like that, where connectivity is always an issue, 5G is going to make a big play there. Even on facilities that are larger in scope, Wi-Fi never would have been able to cover. Now we can do it with 5G at much more affordable cost. It's going to be a game changer from collecting data that we were never able to capture prior.
Yeah,
I look at 5G as just being a growing the amount of data that we have geometrically. We're already behind the eight ball trying to consume all the data now. And to Rebecca's point about an ecosystem, right? You really have to have a platform to be able to ingest data at fire hose speed. And make decisions about it. And once you get to 5G, a fire hose is going to be like a sprinkler.
So, Dr. G, I hate to interrupt. We could carry this on all day long, I know. It's an exciting discussion, but I'm being prompted that we need to give our audience a chance. So we're going to go bring in the voice of our audience and move to take a few questions. So as a reminder for those still on, you can submit your questions in the live chat, which will be on the bottom on the right of the feed, and my producer will hand them over. I've seen a few questions come through already. So the first question is, how practical are IoT solutions in today's business environment? So I guess I'm going to put that to you, Matt. You started talking about the fact that you want to make it easy, but how practical are these solutions?
I would say that they are embedded in every operation that you can think of right now. It's whether you want to put the title of IoT on them or not. They are practical. It's, do we collect the data and collaborate to make that data effective is the bigger question. So the cost of devices, sensors, I mean, RFID, we're sub 20 cents now for RFID if you want to know location or what an asset is. So it's very affordable, it's very effective, and it is very practical.
Now, Matt, the next question is for you as well.
Someone out there.
Yeah, sorry, Rebecca, go for it.
I just got a different angle on that, which is the technology's there, right? So it's making the decision in your company so you can use it in a practical way, right? Pick that use case that's going to change the way you do your operations or improve customer satisfaction. Do something to get going that shows results, and then you've got your processes in place and you build from there. So I think taking a practical approach is important too.
Yes, I mean, I think what you're both saying is the barrier to entry is pretty low, and the upside is huge potentially. So get going with a use case, some sort of proof of concept, because you may be very surprised at how much value will come out of this. So Matt, the next question is for you as well. Someone read my mind because this was on my list. I'm scared to ask it because I don't know what the answer might be, which is, so outside of the mop, where's been the most unique location you've placed the sensor?
Ooh, we're in mines underneath Lake Ontario, in salt mines. We're all over the place, perimeter fence lines of prisons, obviously all over retail and healthcare as well, inside pipelines, for inspection purposes, things like that. You'd be surprised that it's almost where are we not rather than where are we.
So I guess I will say that with the current pandemic situation, software engineers are mostly confined to their homes, and they would kill for a job as one of your engineers because you guys get out there, right? You get to not only get out there, but go to some interesting places.
Whether you want to go or not, you're going.
All right. I'm going to ask one other question, Matt, which is combinations of IoT and virtual reality. Is that something you've seen a lot? I mean, it would seem to be two interesting sets of technologies that have an overlap.
Virtual reality, or even we're seeing more in augmented reality with aging workforce, say in manufacturing or logistics, where you don't see a younger group of individuals taking over the guys that have been there for 30 plus years that can just listen to a roller bearing and know that there's something going on with that. We're starting to see where we're virtualizing the machinery and creating that in an AR perspective. So when you do have someone that may be less skilled or untrained coming in to do repairs on a piece of equipment that's 20 or 30 years old, they can draw their iPad up to it, explode that drawing of that device in real time through augmented reality, and really understand the inner workings and repair that piece of equipment quicker.
Now, in looking around and doing some research before the show, I came across the term human augmentation, which to me sounds really suspect. And there's kind of being physical and cognitive improvements being brought in by a combination of IoT and AI. And we all remember the $6 million man, right? But I think the $6 million man nowadays may be worth a lot more. All right, so I think we've kind of run out of time. We could definitely do this all day. That's all the time we have for this week. To my guests, thank you for joining me today. We've really enjoyed the discussion. I have, and I would love to have you all on some sort of follow-up episode in future. Matt and Rebecca, we have a little surprise to say thanks for you, which I think my producer is going to share on the screen now. So I don't know if... All right, that's just to say thanks. We will be sending you hard copies of that. We'll give those away to all of our everyone that attends and joins us in the Sandbox. So
those are superheroes.
All right, so I'm going to say thanks again to everyone that's joined me today. Thanks to the audience. It's been great having you here with us in the Sandbox. As a reminder, please join us here next Thursday on the 19th. Where we'll be getting neurotic about analytics. And Dr. G, I believe I will have you back in the Sandbox with me. Until then, keep well, keep innovating, and we will see you all next time.